Peace and blessings, family. This is your brother, Sar Imhotep, with the Mark Delaney Center for Egyptology. And today is Sunday, July the 23rd, officially Leo season. And this is the after party. So we just had a discussion regarding a relatively recent critique of Jean-Claude Mboli's Origin of African Language text by Dr. Sandro Capo-Chichi. And it seems that a few of you had some questions, and so we'll see if we can get them answered here today. The link, if you want to join the panel, is in the comment section on YouTube and on Facebook, on the Asar Imhotep Facebook page. So all that and more when we return in just a moment. And we are back. And let me just get this out of the way. And so again, this is the after party for part 2 of our series, or a subset of our series, part 2 and a subset of our series on learning how to critique the critique. And we are reviewing some arguments that were made by Dr. Sandro Capo-Chichi regarding Jean-Claude Mboli's Origin of African Languages, written originally in French. And so what I'm going to try to do is find my presentation, because that was a pre-recorded show that we just saw previously. And I, did that. As part 3 is already done. For those who are on my Patreon, they, of course, have early access to some of these discussions. And so you can currently watch it if you don't want to wait by joining the Patreon page. And that is patreon.com/Asar Imhotep. And, all that and more when you go there. But let me just try to find the presentation so that if I've already answered the question within the presentation, I'll try to answer it there or with the slide. So let me go there and let me look into the comment section. And so again, I have mentioned that the link to join the discussion, if you want to actually have a conversation, is in the chat box, and it is pinned on YouTube. That is, it is pinned to the top. So excuse the background noise. I'm out and about, and so this show wasn't necessarily planned, but we do what it do. And so let me just kind of scroll up. So peace to learn together with Obama, and thank you. Brother Dasharab is in the building, and Rich the African Elder is in the building. Hotep to Sister Mika, and I think that's it, who has made themselves known in the chat at the moment. So I wanted to give it a little time for those who were listening and wanted to join in on the after party, that is. So let me just go up. I saw something here, and let me get that out of the way. So Dasharab says, Brother Asar, why isn't the second consonant missing when it's used for a SARS spine. If you're talking about the word dejed, that's because that's a different word. And and let me see if I can find another presentation that might be helpful in this sense. Mono. Okay. It's gotten to the point now. I gotta search. Okay. So let me share my screen, and so we're gonna do this presentation here. So he says, why isn't the second consonant missing when it's used for a SARS spine? So I don't have anything ready for, a SARS spine. But again, a SARS spine is the word dejed. It is a different word. Ultimately, all the words go to body parts, but by the time it gets to the form of dejed, it is in fact a different word. And so, what we are going to do here, I'm going to, and while I am doing this presentation, um, I am going to not be able to see the because I'm in full screen. I won't be able to see the chat. So let's go slideshow and from the current slide. So we got to understand some of the arguments that are made. And me myself, I disagree with uh Mboli on this particular point when it comes to Egyptian. We agree, or he at least agrees with me when we're talking diachronically beyond the ancient Egyptian language. But for him, for Jean-Claude Mboli, by the time we have written Egyptian, he believes that the basis of the words in the ancient Egyptian language were, or at least Middle Egyptian, was consonant, vowel, consonant, or consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel, right? And so, if you haven't, been familiar with Jean-Claude Mboli's reconstruction model for the Negro Egyptian language, I have renamed certain key features here. And so this is, not important here, but the way that well, I guess it is important for this discussion. So note that I renamed, he doesn't name it this in his book. So I renamed it, what you see here on the right-hand side, for clarity, because the way that he words it, it is confusing. And, he and I have had some conversations about that in the past. So, for him, there is this language family called Negro Egyptian or Black Egyptian or Negro Egyptian. And I renamed that larger language family, the big family, Chi and Kanda. And Nkanda is a modern Bantu word essentially for family, right? And it is so this is the most ancient. So the larger language family I've renamed instead of Negro Egyptian to Chikanda. And there's different stages to the language that it has evolved. So I call the most ancient stage Chiankanda Chikulu, meaning the most ancient of the great African language family, right? And so in this family, it was simply some roots, consonant, vowel that you see. So that's what the CVs mean here at the top, right? And then this in Chikanda, Chiankulu, it broke up into three primary branches that have interacted with each other over different periods of time. And the way that they formed words became characteristic of each one of these different branches of Chiankanda Chikulu, right? So there's the Kikwe group, and there is the Kweki group, and there is the Kikuki group. And so the Kikuki, as you can see from the consonant vowel consonants, consonant vowel, consonant vowel, consonant vowel, this is ultimately where you get your Proto-Semitic and Semitic languages from, right? Because Semitic languages have to have this three consonant template that they'll change the vowels and then they'll add some prefixes and suffixes to it to form words. Well, that was the initial form, but there was a combining in the other two branches. So where Kikuki is now called Kikwe and Kweki. I won't get into the details of that, but just know that, these are consonant vowel, but then they're suffixed by a consonant vowel or is prefixed by a consonant vowel morpheme, but they ultimately reduce themselves to consonant vowel form of words. And then these groups interact, and then there's another stage that we call Chiena Intu that houses, Hausa language, Zande language, Middle Egyptian, Coptic, Shango, Somali, right? And then the Kabed language is what gives birth ultimately to Semitic, right? And pre-Proto-Semitic after interacting with these language families. I mean, these languages, these daughter languages of Chiankanda Chikulu, right? So he argues that from 10 basic sounds and onomatopoeic words or roots came different uh, words over time. This is how our vocabulary built up. And so, here's some examples here. But ultimately the bulk of it came from our associating with the human body and a tree. And from this notion of the human body as a tree, we get all these other different words that emerged. So the same word for head became the word for sky. The same word for mountain became the same words to denote the concept of hugeness, of bigness. The same word for tree trunk becomes the word for body. And of course, the person. And then, of course, the bark of the tree becomes the word for skin, right? And then you have the words for limb of the branches, like, so we're a tree trunk, and then, our legs are like the roots and the feet, but the limbs are like the tree branches. So we're going back to the earliest mindset of African peoples in this language family. So this is how these concepts built, right? And and so again, it comes to this notion of consonant vowel, consonant vowel. But for Mboli, the main template for the Kikwe and the Kweki languages was consonant vowel, consonant vowel. But what I argue is that in Egyptian, it is actually simply consonant vowel roots. And then this consonant vowel has many different prefixes and suffixes in the language. And so these, when we talk about monosyllabic forms, this is what we mean. So here are some examples. So again, when I write CV, that's consonant and vowel. So an example would be the English word go, consonant G, O, vowel. So go would be a one variant of a monosyllabic form of a word. Then you have the kind that is vowel consonant, like the word at, like where your mama at, right? So this vowel A and this consonant T. Then you have these consonant vowel consonant words, like the word in English sit, consonant vowel consonant. And then you have, for example, these words like with a consonant vowel vowel consonant, like in the word fool, F consonant O, O vowel vowel, L another consonant. So when we talk about these monosyllabic forms, these are the variations of a monosyllabic, because all of these um, you would say it in one go. So like go, at, sit, food. But if you was to say the word baba, that's two syllables. So this would not be a monosyllabic form. A bisyllabic or disyllabic word would be like baba. That's consonant vowel, right? And so when it comes to like the ancient Egyptian language, it leans towards more consonant vowel forms. It tries to always get to this stage. However, it is my argument that they are built off of single consonant forms, because remember, the ancient Egyptian language did not write out its vowels. So, it only left us the consonants to play with, right? And so, this is a lesson unto itself. So I won't go ham on this, but the word the jed itself is a different word than the the other forms of the word, like what we did with dejet, meaning body part. So that still retained its semantic form, meaning body part, whereas the um, let me go back here and let's do this. All right. So going back to the presentation, so remember the primary issue that Capo-Chichi had. So when you normally write this word here, it is just as you see in the hieroglyphs. This is snake, sign with the j, or is believed to have, or something close to that sound, and then a suffix t, right? And so what Mboli did is he put this R here, but he put it in parentheses to let you know that this is not the form, and he discusses this because here's the discussion, letting you know that he put it there. So he didn't put it there and leave it and then make it seem like it's always been there. He has a whole conversation of why he put the R there. So the R is not put there arbitrarily. He does it because when he compares the other languages, the other languages have the second consonant there. And the reason why um, that this T is not the quote unquote second consonant is because of the sound laws that he established here. So when you see in ancient Egyptian the suffix T, it manifests itself in the Sango language as a high tone. So you have to kind of understand this aspect of linguistics too. So there's of course there's African languages, many languages that have tones in them, especially African languages. And tones can have grammatical functions in a language. However, a lot of these tones are birthed as the result of the losing of the grammatical morpheme in consonant or vowel form in the language. And so it is trying to compensate for that loss by expressing itself in a lower high tone. So in the Sango language, a Central African language, the the what is present in Middle Egyptian as the suffix t again is a high tone on the final vowel in Sango. So this is how we know for a fact that this t is not the second consonant, it is the third. It is the morpheme of body parts in this instance, right? And so it is confirmed with this word for hand. because it's the exact opposite. What happens here for the word for body in terms of jet in Middle Egyptian, that happened in Songo for the word T, meaning hand. The second syllable, the second consonant and its vowel is lost, but the final T manifests itself as a high tone on the final vowel. And as I stated in our conversation, this D, this underlying D, this is a secondary form. The original form of this word has a G sound. So this went through a process of what we call palatalization as a result of a front vowel after the velar. And so this is confirmed in Sango when we see these uh, forms of the word here with these front vowels. But this is why I had these words highlighted here, because these are different. Well, at least this word here. This is a different variation, a dialectical variation, or a doublet in the language in the more original form. And you see in the second consonant, it is the R sound. Same thing with here, it's the R, but the R disappeared in this variation here. More than likely, it just turned into a vowel. And remember that the ancient Egyptian language did not write its vowels, right? So G became, in certain instances, G became the J sound. And so we have all these other dialectical these other variants of the same ancestral word in the language that still keep the R. This is why we put the R here, to let everyone know that there was an R here. It disappeared on this word, but it remained in the word for hand. But the word for body and the word for hand are the same word. It's the same word as the word for leg, in both of these particular languages. And so, I hope that helps. But it's a little bit more. It's an issue of logic, um, and so, you have to revisit the previous video, for a little bit more clarity. All right. So let me go back up here. Learn together with Obama says the argument of different languages or dialects being present in the hieroglyphs is convincing. It's hard to find a consistent model, prefixes and suffixes. Exactly. And I don't know if I discussed that in this presentation. I don't think I did. But that's one of the main things that I kind of highlight in a lot of my text is that it is clear that matter of fact, I didn't know I had this. I'm gonna go back to matter of fact, let me do that. And so but to finish answering your question, there's too many words for head, there's too many words for hands, there's too many words for body parts, there's too many words for sun, for rivers in the language. And that is a telltale sign that there was multiple languages being spoken along the Nile River, and either different language speakers were writing in the hieroglyphs, or the main speakers of the language, for example, of Middle Egyptian, they borrowed these words from these other languages. But it's more than likely the former, that you had people who spoke different languages and or different dialects in ancient Egypt who are who are in essence code switching when they're writing the ancient Egyptian language. And so it's I'm from Texas, so it's a lot of Spanish speakers in Texas because we're right close to the border. And so when you hear a lot of Mexicans speaking, in, for example, they'll in the middle of the conversation just go back and forth between English and Spanish. And so this is an essence of code switching, and they even have a term for it called Spanglish, right? And so so imagine them, instead of standard English when they're writing exactly how they're speaking. So in some parts of the text in which you're reading, you would see English words, and then in another part of the text you would see Spanish words, or they would just kind of substitute in and out for the Spanish word for what we would say something commonly in English. Now, when we're some thousands year later looking back at the text from we're reading a personal letter from Maria from Texas, right? And you're seeing these words, you would have to, come to the conclusion that there was at least in Texas, it was a multilingual space, and then the person who was writing this letter was going back and forth between, the lingua franca in their native language, right? So this is what we see in ancient Egypt, but this is what I wanted to show in the when I talk about evidence of the monosyllabic. So this is where Mboli and I disagree. So he believes that all words are just consonant and vowel, and I'm like, no, they're just consonant vowel roots, and then the second consonant vowel is a suffix or a prefix on the root. And so, going back to the term, so this is how we would originally, without the R, put in the R there. This is how we would write the word body self in the Egyptian language, Djet, right? And the word for surf, right? But notice when we get to the word for people, it adds these other consonants. So now it's WNJWT, right? It's adding these different consonants to the root, these consonant vowel morphemes to expand on the root. So, for example, like we have this word rigi, to give, to set, to place. But now we have a T suffix. This is the T for abstract. Now the concept of giving, we it drops the R and it adds the T, and it becomes the noun, because this is a verb. Now it becomes the noun gift. But when we add these other prefixes and suffixes to that root, it becomes the word for offerings. So you see how the adding of the prefixes and suffixes expands the words. So let's look at this word in the third row. It has this word. Uh, it's really more like sej or zech. Sometimes you can get away with haj or hajj, meaning to burn, to roast. But when you drop that prefix and you add this suffix, it becomes the word for fire drill. So notice on the fourth row, again, this is a different root, the jet meaning flood, but now you drop the T and you add the W prefix and it becomes a body of water. But then you keep the W prefix, but now you add an N suffix and a W suffix, and it becomes a word for flood again, right? And then here's another variation. So you drop the N suffix and then you add this suffix again, and now it becomes the word for canal. And you can see the same thing happening here with the word for cattle, goats, cattle herd, right? So now we stick another prefix that's in here, which wasn't present in this word for cattle. So you got to understand that all of these are built off of monosyllabic roots, and this is how you prove that is the case. And so and I show in this slide here, I won't go through these, but you can, and they're going to be in the upcoming book, that that the very word unk is a dialectical variant or a different language variant of the very word dejet or injet, subject, slave, servant or whatnot, right? You gotta you gotta know these roots, and this is why I'm able to disagree with Mboli on this point, because I've gone through the words, I've done the experiments, and the experiments falsify his notion that they would just they try to converge to a consonant vowel form, but they're built off of monosyllabic consonant vowel roots. So I hope that kind of helps. So let me go back and let me see what y'all talking about here. And he says Capo is mostly lost. I wouldn't say lost, but this is just not his area of expertise. And I keep reiterating that there are so many fields of linguistics that just because you have knowledge in one area, it does not automatically transfer into another area of linguistics. And that's just ultimately the issue. He says spelling don't make it a different word. Yes, it does. You say Rich the African Elder says, I am reading Self-Healing Power by Ancestor Fukuyama, page 10. There's a word Iwa that seems to mean have, contrast the word Iwa Pele. I think you sent me a message with this, and I replied to it that I don't. My book is in my storage, so you're going to have to provide the actual meaning that Fukuyama gives for that phrase, because just because these words look alike does not mean that they are the same word. So that's what we want to avoid doing, as researchers. Let's see. But it seems like Proto-Bantu and Bantu languages have consonant vowel for the most part. It does, and but you got to remember that Bantu, as we understand it now, is a modern form. It is kind of coalesced, but it's built, and we have evidence that even Bantu is just built from monosyllabic consonant vowel roots. Same thing with collagen, right? Let's see. If initially words are built on a consonant vowel sequence, the second consonant vowel would be a fossilized suffix. Exactly. If the form is now in a consonant vowel consonant form, then yes, it is fossilized. And this is exactly what happened with the word. Let me give an example here. In the Hausa language, they have a word for person or human being as muntun, right? So that's what you see on the screen here. The root of the word is tu, which is the variant of that same word j, meaning body part or body, right? So it was suffixed initially with right? And so now it became tomb, it became fossilized. So they re-added the mu, but this time they prefixed it, because this is the same word here. This is the same grammatical feature. So now it's prefixed on the root. So now in Hausa you say mutun instead of mutu, or into, as they would say in Bantu languages. So this happens all the time. So you just kind of have to be knowledgeable on that history. If you say so, Dasha Rob, I trust your linguistic judgment on this. And so I'm not going to argue with you on that. It seems like ancient Egyptian has forms close to proto-language consonant vowel that Bantu, which has fossilized forms of second consonant vowel. Yes. And peace and blessings to you, Brother Robert. Thank you for joining the conversation. And for those of you who are just joining, this is simply the after show. And we are discussing, I guess, certain aspects of commentary from the last program that we just showed, and talking about how to critique the critique, reviewing Dr. Sandro Capo-Chichi's analysis on Mboli's 2010 work titled The Origin of African Languages. So this is just an open forum, and if there's not any more questions, and no one's going to join the panel, I won't hold y'all long. Peace and blessings to Sister Al-Kabelan Mine, who out there at Cali. So I guess, y'all afternoons is just really getting started out there. I'm on the East Coast. So thank you for joining. And so I'm just going to wait a little bit to see if there's any more questions or any follow-ups to anything. And if not, then I will close the show. He says, no, please, more information. Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything necessarily prepared at the moment. There's some stuff that I'm working on, but it's not yet there. So I'm working on it. I'm trying to make sure that I hit you with the hot stuff. Let me see. Says, would you say that Coptic Bear was prosodically close to Somali Bear? I don't know what you necessarily mean by prosodically, but according to the model that Mboli has established, the mere fact that Coptic and Somali are Behair languages, this would put Coptic closer to Somali in terms of where they are in the branch of the tree, as we understand in Mboli's model. So it says, go off the top of your head, any topic, recent news. Yeah, we'll be all over the place. But I will say this then, that last night I went to go see the Oppenheimer movie. And so if you are into that kind of thing in terms of a creative take on the development and motivations for the hydrogen or atomic bomb that was dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima back in the day during so-called World War II, then I highly recommend the film. But I recommend it not for the same reasons that most folks would probably recommend the film if you go to kind of listen for the reviews online. I am intrigued by the film in the sense that they're highlighting and putting into the minds, because this movie is made for their people, right? And so who are they highlighting? They're highlighting their intellectuals, their greatest thinkers, and showing the processes and the kinds of questions that they're asking, and the kinds of issues, internal issues that they have, knowing that what they are working for and creating is very destructive. However, we got this situation where we're losing, hundreds of thousands of our family members, because we're dealing with a group of people who are equally matched in terms of weaponry. So the only way that we're going to win this war is if we create a weapon that deters them from wanting to attack further, right? So there's underlying questions there. Then there's these other kinds of questions dealing with the nature of the universe and quantum mechanics and the details and the importance of math and logic, and the and how theoretical development and scientific experimentation go hand in hand, right? And the initial conflict that Oppenheimer and some of his colleagues are having, in regards to what they think is possible and what they know to be possible as a result of actually doing experiments, right? And so when there's a whole group of physicists who are called theoretical physicists. They don't do any experiments. They just work on the logic and the math, and they propose possibilities for the the people who do experimental science can devise different experiments to validate the hypotheses put forth by many of the theoretical sciences, right? And then and not to kind of give spoilers, but there's a period of the film where they're questioning the the motives of certain people who were involved in the Manhattan Project, right? Because when you're dealing with war, you also have to deal with spies. So, what are the protocols that you have to have in place to ensure that top secret information is not leaked to the hands of your enemies? And so, these are the kinds of things that I noticed in the film that, you know, are very important to our kinds of discussions, but it also, you know, kind of started or rekindled a conversation within my mind about the level of conversation that Africans and African American people are having on these platforms. It's so low vibrational, like these folks are excited, who come by the hundreds and the dozens to hear their intellectuals break down, complex mathematical and physical concepts in a lecture hall. And then the only time that, a lot of us show up to an intellectual lecture on YouTube, for example, is if there's some kind of controversy or beef, So these are the kinds of conversations I want to have. And so, like, speaking on, so I see he says, no, that's not the comment. He says, can you update us on the leadership book and the symbol book? Those are in the works, and so I just have a lot on my plate now, because I'm heavy into my math right now, and so I could start having different conversations, and I'm preparing for an initiative that is inspired by the 20 plus years of research going into this book here, Race and Identity in Ancient Egypt, which you can get currently right now at Asar Imhotep, or at least you can get the pre-sale. You can pre-sale order it right now. It comes out in a month on August the 22nd. And so they will be released and mailed off on that date for those who have pre-ordered. And so, this is something that I have been putting together And so the title of the text is called Race and Identity in Ancient Egypt, Volume 1. And why do I have my email address instead of the website? That's what I want. AsaramHotep.com. So you can get the book at AsaramHotep.com. So, but I'm getting ready to put forth an initiative called Chicom, which is an agro, let me write this out, Afro or African centered, but Afrocentric philosophy, paradigm, and praxis. Right, so I'm putting that on the screen. So the book has inspired a movement centered around agriculture and building a living framework off of the lessons learned from the studying and the development and the cultivation of land, right? So, we know Chicam as, the modern variation of the word Kemet. And so what I'm trying to do is to update the the praxis of adopting ancient Egyptian philosophy and culture, integrating it with, reintegrating it within the larger, collective, what I call kimoyo or African traditions, but modernizing it and practicalizing it for the everyday person without all of these so-called religious and spiritual baggage that people think is religious and spiritual, right? And so we're going to really get at the heart of what this is. And so Chicam, which is an agro, and why did I put that? Let me um, edit that. It's an agro Afro centric. There we go. An agro Afrocentric philosophy, paradigm, and praxis. So the other books in terms of leadership and symbology and all of that is related to this. But I'm putting together these series of books, and I'm be working with some folks so that we can implement this in a very serious way that is not, religi, if I can make a word up like that, that's, religified, but is the fundamentals of the system is understood and can be adopted by any one of us, and it won't conflict. Unless you're just a religious fanatic in Christianity or Islam, then there's nothing we can do for you. But outside of that, for those who want to delve into, African wisdom traditions and social systems, and to be able to utilize that information in a similar way that, for example, Oppenheimer was able to utilize quantum mechanics and Newtonian physics to create a weapon. And so this is what we're doing. We're creating a weapon. Chicam is a weapon, against white supremacy, anti-African hate, uh, and a whole litany of things. So your culture is your immune system. It is your defense system against, foreign invasions. And so we have to develop a modern, more robust system. And the underlying framework for this system is Chicam. And so we'll get into that more into the future. But if you haven't gotten your copy of the book, I highly recommend, or if you haven't ordered your copy of the book just yet, I highly recommend that you go to asaramhotep.com and purchase your copy of Race Identity in Ancient Egypt. It is currently discounted at $35. Come August 22nd, it will be $45. So save $10 and get the book early. or order the book early. And so let me get out of there and get out there and go back to the comments. And let me see what Ogun Machete says. Speaking of hydrogen, what's the name of that book by the African brother that's out of print? I think it's called The Hydrogen God Principle or something like that. I have no idea. I don't even know if I'm who's coming to mind. I think you're talking about what is his name? Brother out of Nigeria. What is it? But it's not the hydrogen like God, but you're talking about Gagut, God's Almighty Grand Unified Theorem. It's Dr. Gabriel Yibo. That's his name. So you're talking about Dr. Gabriel Yibo's God Almighty Grand Unified Theorem text. And so I'm going to have to do. I have his summary book. I can't. The big book is out of print, and I haven't been able to get a copy of it. But I have that in my storage. I'm gonna get that out, and we can have some conversations about it. So these are the kinds of conversations I want to move to where we're having some real deep science. Let's get in the mud. Let's start having some real serious, deep conversations about life and reality, and how we could utilize that information to improve the lives of African people in a very serious way, and not just some random. We talking about evolution, and you're not even into medicine, for example, right? So, and Ogun says, yes, that's it. No doubt. And so Torah Israelite, peace and blessings to you. What are your thoughts? The root word NGR existed in ancient Egyptian sacred writings and hieroglyphs and has divine origin and meaning. Ernie A. Smith, MD, PhD, professor in linguistics. If I don't think that Ernie Smith, he is more so a sociolinguist, but he does not. He's not really well, to my knowledge, at least when everybody was trying to make the word NGR an ancient Egyptian word, people weren't understanding what the word means. But it's not a divine name. It's not it's not what you think. And I think people are seeing the consonants in Budge's dictionary and trying to make it more than it is, to make it seem like the word negro or negro or that it has some meaning beyond what it actually means, and that's not it at all. But we would have to do another show, because I would have to show step by step on how they're not the same word. So it's just people doing kind of liquorship, and that's just not what we do here. Says African indigenous knowledge systems are to so-called spirituality and epistemology as wet as to water. Indeed. And let me see. Yep. And there's no connection there. And what else is going on? Trying to work on some other things. And if you haven't gotten Dr. Chilima Mukinge's book Muntu Wan Zombie, this is a good and excellent text for grounding yourself in certain African traditions, and especially if you want to expand your knowledge beyond the Yoruba people and the ancient Egyptians. He is of the Luba tradition, the Baluba people in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and this is just an excellent text. So you can get this at Amazon.com, right? And let me see. And you're welcome. You're welcome. And I won't be seeing the Barbie movie. There's just no incentive or motivation outside of having some little girls to go see the Barbie movie. That's just me. But I think that is it. So no more questions, no more comments. So with that said, I do appreciate y'all for, staying tuned. I know there's some other shows going on right now. I know Mosi or Kofi Pasai research team has a show going on, and Brother Sekou and them are still talking on Salnetta TV. So, I may interrupt the conversation on there. And Ogun says, what are your thoughts on African fractals? That's, I mean, there's nothing really much to think about. It's just, we're talking about recursive mathematical principles. But this is something that I'm going to be dealing with in the future. So this is one of the reasons why I'm getting back tight with my math, so I can find different ways to explain mathematical principles and concepts, not only dealing with African culture, but even with modern day that is useful for everyone at this time. But I think that's pretty much it. So with that said, I am out. Peace.
Reality breaking down all my fantasies. It would be nice if I at least had one fantasy. That neutrality about to take a terabyte from the American apple pie. Better get a slice. It's kinda scary the way that this life is moving on. Marvin's doing backflips inside his grave. What's going on? We have head-on collisions, not seeing another's vision. Maybe that's the reason why some colors fit the description. A lot of relationships need life rafts, sinking ships. I guess you just can't have only one like potato chips. I would love for you to listen with an open heart, but would you really even hear me if it's torn apart?